piece of the puzzle was removed. We can easily replace it. We found out that Adam Budd reported the plane missing at 10 o'clock. We found pieces of the puzzle that show the family, including Senator Kennedy, also made reports, beginning only a short while after Adam Budd's report at 10 p.m. and continuing throughout the night. The NTAP radar information, as well as the news that John Kennedy contacted the Martha's Vineyard Tower on his final approach, also got lost. As a result, 15.5 hours of search time were also lost. And what emerges from this scene is a conspiracy between the upper levels of the Air Force and FAA to manipulate events, draw a false picture of John as a careless and incompetent pilot, and to prevent the search and rescue teams from arriving at the crash area for as long as possible. And there are more missing pieces. For example, all of John's flight instructors would be shocked to find out that, according to Colonel Rourke and his friends, on this particular flight, John did not follow two of the most basic and routine safety procedures. He did not, according to the bad guys, file a flight plan. And they say he did not contact any of the radar facilities along the route of his flight to Martha's Vineyard. The reason for filing a flight plan with the FAA is that it tells the search and rescue people where to look for you if you go missing. John had always filed a flight plan before on all of his previous trips, but not this time? The missing flight plan is one of the main reasons given by Rourke and his friends for the 15-hour delay locating the crash. There are also several good reasons that a careful and conscientious pilot like John would always contact the air traffic control radar facilities along the route of a flight. First, contacting the controllers allows them to warn you of any hazards in your area. For example, if a jumbo jet has engine trouble and unexpectedly has to turn around and then comes barreling up behind you, the controllers can warn you, if you contact them, to watch out, and they can tell you where to go to get out of the way. If a storm develops suddenly and comes sweeping into your flight path, the controllers can warn you, if you contact them. In addition, when you contact them, the air traffic controllers give you an identifying radar code that you punch into a device on your plane called a radar transponder. Your onboard radar transponder then sends out a signal, which is picked up by the FAA's radar, so that your radar blip now tells them exactly who you are and what your altitude is. And, as we discussed before, when you contact the controllers, they enter your transponder's blip into the computer system, so that if your plane descends below 100 feet anywhere but on the runway of your target airport, an alarm goes off in the FAA air traffic control facility, telling the controllers to send a search and rescue team to come and get you. So contacting the controllers or not contacting them is not exactly a small deal, and it was unheard of for John not to follow such a basic procedure. So Rourke and his friends say that John Kennedy never contacted anyone and never filed a flight plan, and idiots like this guy point to this as evidence to show that John was a careless, irresponsible daredevil who deserved to die. But given Rourke's record of lying about everything else, the fact that Rourke says anything certainly doesn't mean that we should believe it, maybe the opposite. And given John's 17-year record of careful, meticulous adherence to safety procedures, it seems more than likely that John did file a flight plan and that he did contact the air traffic control facilities along the route, but that his flight plan and all of his contacts with air traffic control somehow became missing pieces. John's plane had a simple cockpit voice recorder that should have preserved a record of the conversations and noise that took place during the last 5 minutes of the flight. But when the plane was recovered, the backup battery, which was necessary to preserve this information, was missing. And so, therefore, this critical information of what happened during John and Carolyn and Lauren's last moments is also missing. Is it possible that during the 15-hour delay, or later after the plane was recovered, that someone removed the battery in order to prevent us from knowing what transpired in the final minutes of the flight? But what would they accomplish by doing such a thing? What could they have been trying to hide? At this point, we can't even begin to guess. Witnesses saw John talking on the phone in the minutes before he took off. Who was he talking to? And what was he talking about? It's a small piece and maybe unimportant, but at this point it attracts our attention because it's missing. It's supposed to be in the report. The NTSB is supposed to investigate this question. It's their routine to do so, and for obvious reasons. I mean, what if Kennedy had threatened to kill himself and his wife during this phone call? That would be important. Was he telling relatives not to wait up for him? That would help to explain the delay if it were true. Was he talking to a flight instructor, making plans or canceling plans? We don't know. The NTSB has the phone record, given the clear evidence in this case of a conspiracy by Rourke and others to hide the truth about what happened. The fact that it's missing should automatically attract our attention. Our response should be, it's missing, it must be important. Those who knew John's personal flying habits say that John kept his flight log in an aquamarine duffel on his plane. Witnesses familiar with John, his flight log, and this duffel were watching the news of the crash on CNN and saw this duffel being recovered among the debris from the crash. CNN's website also covered the story of the debris recovered after the crash and quotes a witness who specifically mentions this duffel as among items recovered by the police after it washed up on the beach at Martha's Vineyard. And you'll notice that this bag was described as being intact. So what? Well, according to the witnesses, if the bag was intact, it would have contained John's flight log. Again, so what? Who cares? I mean, why would anyone want to hide the flight log from us? Well, the flight log records who was on the plane, and it does this for one principal reason, so that if the plane crashes, we can recover the flight log and verify who was on the plane. Then we know how many bodies, living or dead, we should be looking for. The insurance companies know whose policy they have to pay out on and whose they don't. To the insurance companies anyway, answering the question of who was on the plane is not a small deal. This question will become even more important in just a minute. Right now, the most important lesson I need you to have learned from the murder of JFK is how to smell a rat. Please recall how we saw that the reports from professional, reliable, on-the-scene witnesses of shots from the front disappeared. They were replaced by unsubstantiated reports that all the shots came from behind. The point is this: when rich and powerful bastards are killing a Democratic leader, our best chance to find out the truth will come from the earliest reports. When we see these early reports from responsible, knowledgeable persons replaced by unsubstantiated reports from people with no name, no experience, the wrong job title, and no credibility, we should resist. We should demand to see credible, substantiated, supporting evidence before accepting the new version that someone is trying to sell us. We need to recognize that this exchanging of bad information for good by itself is evidence that supports a charge of conspiracy to murder.
At this point, according to what the family has told us, it is believed that Kennedy was the pilot of the plane and that, in fact, he was the only pilot on board. There had been earlier reports that perhaps there had been a fourth passenger, a flight instructor. According to the family and what they have told us, that is not the case. The family is also saying that they are not sure that JFK Jr. had the proper license to pilot the plane last night, though the FAA has in fact not confirmed that.
Now let's slow down and examine this statement very carefully. What does it tell us? The earliest reports said that there was a flight instructor on the plane. Please recognize then that the idea that a flight instructor was on the plane should not be casually dismissed, even if later some nameless person, known only as the family, began running around telling all the media a couple of really controversial things. Let's take the second part about John Kennedy's pilot's license first.
The family is also saying that they are not sure that JFK Jr. had the proper license to pilot the plane last night, though the FAA has in fact not confirmed that.
Jeez, John Kennedy didn't even have a license? What the hell did he think he was doing? Careless, irresponsible, stupid rich kid, acting like a daredevil with his wife on board. Too bad about her, but hell, he deserved to die. This is the kind of ugly truth you would think the family might want to keep quiet about. But what if it weren't true? What kind of family member would say it to the press if it weren't true? It wasn't true.
He was qualified. He had a private pilot single-engine land license, which qualified him to fly this particular airplane under visual flight rules. The weather observation at the Martha's Vineyard Airport at 9 o'clock was 8 miles.